Lena Carew never expected her first night in a crime lord's mansion to end with blood on her hands. But then again, she never expected Rhett Malone to notice the bruises she'd hidden for years. In a world where silence means survival, one accidental glimpse changes everything. When the most dangerous man in the city offers protection she never asked for, Lena must choose: accept help from a monster or return to the nightmare she escaped. This is a story about invisible women, quiet violence, and the unexpected mercy of a man who controls an empire built on fear. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. But the bus station at midnight smelled like diesel and desperation. Lena Carew pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold and white. Her nursing diploma sat folded in her backpack. 4 years of sleepless nights and borrowed textbooks compressed into a single piece of paper that promised a future she couldn't quite believe in yet. The bus groaned to a stop 3 blocks from her mother's apartment. Lena shouldered her bag and stepped into the humid June air, her worn sneakers silent on the cracked sidewalk. She'd texted her mother twice from school. No response. That wasn't unusual. Claire Carew worked double shifts at the Malone estate, cleaning rooms in a mansion Lena had only seen in newspaper photographs. The apartment building loomed ahead, its brick facade crumbling at the corners. Lena climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, each step familiar, each creak a memory. She raised her hand to knock, then heard it. A man's voice. Low, slurred, angry. Her stepfather. Lena's hand froze midair. Boyd wasn't supposed to be here. He'd moved out 8 months ago after her mother finally pressed charges: assault, harassment, violation of a restraining order. The court date was set for July. You think you can just ignore me? Boyd's voice cracked through the door. I live here, Clara. You don't get to lock me out of my own goddamn house. This isn't your house. Her mother's voice was steady, but Lena heard the tremor underneath. You need to leave. Now. Or what? You'll call the cops again? Get me arrested? You know what happens when you do that, don't you? Lena didn't think. She shoved her key into the lock and threw the door open. The apartment was exactly as she remembered. Cramped, dim, smelling faintly of lavender cleaning solution. Boyd stood in the center of the living room, his face flushed, shirt untucked. Clara stood near the kitchen counter, one hand gripping the edge like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Lena. Clara's eyes went wide. You're home early. Get out, Lena said, her voice flat. Boyd turned slowly, his bloodshot gaze sliding over her like oil. Well, well, little Lena, all grown up. Thought you'd stay away longer. I said get out. He laughed, a wet, ugly sound. You gonna make me? You and your saint of a mother gonna call the cops again? Yeah, that worked real well last time. Lena stepped forward, dropping her bag by the door. The restraining order is still active. You're not supposed to be within 500 feet of her. Restraining order? Boyd rolled the words around his mouth like they tasted funny. You hear that, Clara? Our daughter's a lawyer now. Nurse, Lena corrected. And if you're not gone in 30 seconds, I'm calling 911. Boyd's smile vanished. He took a step toward her, close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath. You don't give me orders in my own house. It's not your house. It never was. For a moment, Boyd just stared at her. Then his hand shot out, fingers closing around her wrist. The same wrist he'd grabbed 100 times before. The same pressure. The same casual cruelty. Let go, Lena said quietly. Or what? Or I'll make sure the judge sees the bruises at your hearing. Boyd's grip tightened. Pain flared up Lena's forearm, sharp and familiar. She'd learned years ago not to flinch, not to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. Lena! Clara moved forward, her voice rising. Boyd, let her go! Shut up, Clara. Let go! Boyd shoved her backward. Lena stumbled, her shoulder slamming into the doorframe. The impact sent a shock of pain down her spine, but she stayed on her feet. You want to play tough? Boyd stepped toward her again. Fine. Let's see how tough you are when... The sound of Clara's hand connecting with Boyd's face echoed through the apartment like a gunshot. Boyd froze, one hand rising slowly to his reddening cheek. Clara stood between him and Lena, her entire body trembling. Get out of my house, Clara whispered. Get out, or I swear I will kill you myself. For a long, terrible moment, nobody moved. Then Boyd laughed. You don't have the guts. He grabbed Clara's arm, Not her wrist, her entire forearm, and twisted. The sound Clara made wasn't a scream. It was worse. A choked, airless gasp of agony. Lena lunged forward, shoving Boyd with both hands. He staggered sideways, releasing Clara, who crumpled against the counter. Her right arm hung at an unnatural angle. "Mom, I'm fine," Clara gasped. Boyd's fist came out of nowhere. Lena saw it half a second too late. She tried to move, tried to duck, but the blow caught her across the jaw and sent her sprawling. The floor rushed up to meet her. Her head cracked against the linoleum. The world went white, then gray, then slowly back into focus. "Should have stayed at school, you stupid little..." Lena rolled onto her side, tasting blood. Boyd stood over her, breathing hard. Behind him, Clara was crying, cradling her broken arm. "You want to call the cops now?" Boyd crouched down, his face inches from Lena's. "Go ahead. See if they get here before I finish what I started." Lena spat blood onto the floor. "Touch her again and I'll kill you." Boyd smiled. "No, you won't." He was right. Lena had spent her entire childhood learning to survive Boyd's violence, not fight it. She knew how to hide bruises under long sleeves. She knew how to lie to teachers and doctors. She knew how to make herself small and invisible until the storm passed, but she'd never learned how to stop it. Boyd stood, brushing off his jeans. "I'll be back tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, because this is my house, and you two are my family, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it." He walked out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. The silence that followed felt like drowning. Lena pushed herself upright, her head swimming. Clara was still on the floor, tears streaming down her face, her broken arm cradled against her chest. "Mom," Lena crawled to her side. "We need to get you to a hospital." "I can't." Clara's voice was barely audible. "I have work tomorrow. If I miss another shift, Mrs. Holloway will fire me. You have a broken arm." "I know." Clara closed her eyes. "I know." Lena helped her mother to the couch, then grabbed a dish towel and filled it with ice. She wrapped it carefully around Clara's swelling forearm, her hands moving automatically through the steps she'd learned in nursing school. Stabilize, elevate, reduce swelling. "How long has he been coming back?" Lena asked quietly. 3 weeks. Clara wouldn't meet her eyes. "He comes at night. Says if I don't let him in, he'll wait for me outside work. Or follow me home. Or, you should have told me. You were finishing school. I didn't want to eat. I don't care." Lena's voice came out sharper than she intended. "You should have told me." Clara finally looked at her, and the exhaustion in her eyes was unbearable. "What would you have done?" Lena didn't have an answer. At 22 years old, with a nursing degree and exactly $200 in her bank account, Lena Carew had no power, no connections, no way to stop a man like Boyd from doing exactly what he'd always done. "We'll figure something out," Lena said, because it was the only thing she could say. Clara nodded, but neither of them believed it. "Tab." The emergency room doctor confirmed what Lena already knew. Broken radius, clean fracture, 6 weeks in a cast minimum. Clara sat on the examination table, pale and silent, while the doctor wrapped her arm in plaster. "You'll need to keep it elevated," the doctor said, scribbling notes on his clipboard. "No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity. I'm writing you a prescription for pain medication." "I can't afford that," Clara interrupted. The doctor paused. "The prescription is $15. "I can't afford it." Lena felt something crack inside her chest. She pulled out her wallet, thin, worn, held together with a rubber band, and counted out $20 in crumpled bills. "I'll cover it," she said. Clara shook her head. "Lena, I'll cover it." They left the hospital at 3 a.m. The city was quiet. The streets empty except for delivery trucks and the occasional taxi. Clara leaned against Lena as they walked, her casted arm hanging heavy between them. "I have to call Mrs. Holloway," Clara said when they reached the apartment. "Tell her I can't work tomorrow." "You mean for the next 6 weeks? I can't take 6 weeks off. We'll lose the apartment." "Then I'll work." Clara stopped walking. "What?" "I'll take your shifts. Tell Mrs. Holloway your daughter just finished nursing school and needs temporary work. I'll do your job until your arm heals." "Lena, you can't." "Why not?" "Because," Clara's voice broke, "because the Malone estate isn't like a hospital. It's not safe." Safer than staying here and waiting for Boyd to come back. Clara had no argument for that. Siam. Mrs. Holloway answered the phone on the third ring, her voice clipped and professional, even at 4 in the morning. Clara, if you're calling to say you can't make your shift, my arm is broken, Clara interrupted. I was in an accident. I have a cast. I can't work for 6 weeks. Silence. I see, Mrs. Holloway said finally. Then I'll need to find a replacement. I have a replacement. My daughter just graduated from nursing school. She needs work. She can start tomorrow, today, whenever you need her. Another pause. Your daughter has no experience with estate management. She's a hard worker. She's responsible. She won't cause trouble. The Malone estate requires discretion, Clara. Your daughter is young. Young people talk. She won't talk, Clara said firmly. I promise. Mrs. Holloway sighed. Fine. Have her here at 6 a.m. sharp. If she's late, don't bother coming at all. The line went dead. Clara set down the phone, her hand shaking. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Lena. Clara caught her daughter's hand, her fingers cold and trembling. The people who work at that estate, we're invisible. We don't ask questions. We don't look too closely. We do our jobs and we leave. Do you understand? I understand. No. Claire's grip tightened. You don't. Rhett Malone isn't like other men. He's a criminal, Lena finished. I know. Everyone knows. It's not just that. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. There are rules in that house. Unspoken rules. Break them and what? Clara looked away. Just don't break them. The Malone estate sat on 12 acres of manicured lawns and iron gates, hidden behind walls tall enough to block out the rest of the city. Lena arrived at 5:45 a.m., her mother's spare uniform hanging loose on her smaller frame. The guards at the gate checked her name against a list, then waved her through without a word. Mrs. Holloway met her at the servants' entrance, a side door tucked beneath a stone archway, away from the main house. She was exactly what Lena expected. Mid-50s, steel-gray hair pulled into a tight bun, eyes that missed nothing. You're early, Mrs. Holloway said. Good. Follow me. The interior of the estate was all dark wood and marble floors, high ceilings, and expensive silence. Lena followed Mrs. Holloway through a maze of hallways, past rooms filled with furniture that probably cost more than Lena's entire education. Your mother cleaned the West Wing, Mrs. Holloway explained, her heels clicking against the floor. Bedrooms, bathrooms, sitting rooms, you'll do the same. You start at 6, finish by 2. You do not speak to Mr. Malone unless he speaks to you first. You do not enter his private office. You do not ask questions about his business. Are we clear? Yes, ma'am. If you see something unusual, you ignore it. If you hear something unusual, you forget it. Your job is to clean, not observe. I understand. Mrs. Holloway stopped in front of a supply closet and handed Lena a key ring. The West Wing is mostly empty this week. Mr. Malone is the only one in residence. His bedroom is the last door on the left. Clean it last, and only if he's not inside. How will I know if he's inside? If the door is closed, he's inside. If it's open, he's not. Simple. She handed Lena a cart loaded with cleaning supplies, bleach, furniture polish, fresh linens, and walked away without another word. Lena stood alone in the hallway, gripping the cart handle. Invisible, her mother had said. Do your job and leave. She could do that. She'd been invisible her entire life. The West Wing was silent except for the sound of Lena's footsteps and the soft squeak of the cleaning cart wheels. She started with the guest bedrooms, immaculate spaces that looked like they hadn't been used in months. She dusted shelves, changed linens that didn't need changing, polished mirrors until they gleamed. By noon, she'd worked her way down the hall to the last door. It stood half open. Lena hesitated, then knocked softly. Hello, Mr. Malone? No answer. She pushed the door wider and stepped inside. The bedroom was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the garden. A massive bed dominated the center of the room, its dark blue sheets perfectly made. Bookshelves lined one wall, packed with medical textbooks and leather-bound novels. Lena moved carefully, dust cloth in hand. She wiped down the nightstand, the dresser, the windowsill. Everything was already clean, but she cleaned it anyway. She was reaching for the top shelf of the bookcase when her sleeve caught on the corner of a picture frame. The frame tipped, wobbled, then fell. Lena lunged forward and caught it, barely, but the sudden movement made her twist wrong. Pain shot through her left forearm, the same arm Boyd had grabbed the night before. Her sleeve rode up. The bruises were dark purple, almost black. 5 distinct finger marks where Boyd had squeezed hard enough to leave impressions. "Shit," Lena whispered. She tugged her sleeve down quickly, her heart pounding. "That looks painful." Lena spun around. Rhett Malone stood in the doorway, watching her. She'd seen his photograph in the newspapers, grainy black and white images that made him look older, harder. In person, he was younger than she expected. Mid-30s, maybe? Tall, lean, wearing a dark suit with the jacket unbuttoned. His hair was black, neatly trimmed. His eyes were gray, and they were currently fixed on her forearm. "I'm sorry," Lena said quickly, pulling her sleeve down further. "I didn't mean to. The frame fell. I was just—" "How did you get those bruises?" Lena froze. "What?" "The bruises on your arm." Rhett's voice was calm, almost conversational. "They're fresh. Less than 24 hours old. How did you get them?" I fell." "You fell." "Yes." "And landed on someone's hand?" Lena's throat went dry. "I don't know what you mean." Rhett stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Those are finger marks. 4 on the underside of your forearm, 1 on top where a thumb would press. Someone grabbed you, hard, recently." "It's nothing. It's not nothing." Lena's pulse hammered in her ears. She wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. "I'm fine. It doesn't matter." "It matters." "Why?" The word came out sharper than she intended. "Why does it matter to you?" Rhett regarded her silently for a long moment. "Because," he said finally, "you're standing in my house, wearing your mother's uniform, lying to me about injuries that suggest someone hurt you. That makes it my business." "It's not your business," Lena said, her voice shaking. "I'm just here to clean, that's all." "Who grabbed you?" "No one." "Who grabbed you?" "I said no one." "You're lying." "So what?" Lena snapped. "So what if I am? What are you going to do about it?" Rhett didn't answer immediately. He moved to the window, looking out at the garden. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "Your mother called Mrs. Holloway at 4 a.m. and begged for your job. She said you just graduated nursing school. She said you needed work. She didn't mention that someone had hurt you badly enough to leave bruises that deep." "My mother doesn't know." "Yes, she does." Rhett turned to face her. "She knows, and she sent you here anyway. Why?" Lena said nothing. "Let me guess," Rhett continued. "Whoever hurt you also hurt her, and she thought working here would be safer than staying home. You don't know anything about my life." "I know violence when I see it." Rhett's gaze dropped to her arm again. "I know what it looks like when someone hides it, and I know you're afraid." "I'm not afraid." "You're terrified." Lena's hands clenched into fists. "Why do you care?" "Because I can stop it." The words hung in the air between them, simple and absolute. Lena stared at him. "What?" "Whoever hurt you," Rhett said calmly, "I can make sure they never do it again." "You don't even know who it was." "Then tell me." "No." "Why not?" "Because," Lena's voice cracked, "because you're a stranger, because I don't know you, because accepting help from someone like you is—" "Someone like me," Rhett repeated. "You mean a criminal?" Lena didn't deny it. "You're right," Rhett said. "I am a criminal. I run operations your mother probably warned you never to ask about. I make decisions most people would call immoral. But I don't hurt women. And I don't let other men do it either. Why should I believe you?" "You shouldn't." Rhett moved toward the door, then paused. "But your mother trusted me enough to send you here. Maybe that should count for something." He left without waiting for a response. Lena stood alone in the silent bedroom, her heart still racing. "I can stop it." The promise echoed in her head, dangerous and impossible. She finished cleaning mechanically, her hands moving through familiar motions while her mind spiraled. When she left the estate at 2 p.m., Mrs. Holloway was waiting by the servants' entrance. "Mr. Malone wants to see you tomorrow," she said. "Same time. Don't be late." "Why?" "He didn't say." Mrs. Holloway's expression was unreadable. "But when Mr. Malone asks to see someone, you show up." Lena walked home in a daze. When she reached the apartment, Clara was asleep on the couch, her casted arm propped on a pillow. Lena covered her with a blanket and sat on the floor beside her. "I can stop it." She didn't believe him. She couldn't afford to believe him, but some small, desperate part of her wanted to. Boyd came back that night. Lena heard him before she saw him, footsteps on the stairs, heavy and uneven. She was washing dishes when the pounding started. "Clara, open the goddamn door!" Lena dried her hands slowly, her heart rate steady. She walked to the door and opened it. Boyd stood in the hallway, swaying slightly. "Where's your mother?" "Asleep." "Wake her up." "No." Boyd's bloodshot eyes narrowed. "You got brave real quick." "You need to leave." "Or what?" "You'll call the cops?" "We both know how that ends." Lena looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something she'd never let herself acknowledge before. Boyd was pathetic. Not dangerous. Not powerful. Just a sad, angry man who hurt people because it was the only thing that made him feel strong. "You're right," Lena said quietly. "I won't call the cops." Boyd smiled. "Smart girl." "But if you come back here again, I'll tell Rhett Malone what you did." The smile vanished. "What? Rhett Malone? You know who he is." Boyd's face went pale. You don't work for him." "I do. As of this morning, and he already knows you hurt me. He asked about the bruises. I didn't tell him your name, but I can. Easily." "You're bluffing. Try me." For a long, terrible moment, Boyd just stared at her. Then he turned and walked away without another word. Lena closed the door, locked it, and slid down to the floor. Her hands were shaking. She'd gambled everything on a stranger's promise, and she had no idea if it would work. But for the first time in her life, she'd fought back, and that had to count for something. Lena didn't sleep that night. She sat on the floor beside her mother's couch, listening to Clara's breathing, watching the shadows move across the ceiling. Every sound in the hallway made her flinch. Every car door, every voice, every footstep could be Boyd coming back. But he didn't come back. When dawn broke through the apartment windows, pale and gray, Lena stood and stretched her stiff muscles. Clara was still asleep, her face peaceful in a way Lena hadn't seen in years. The cast on her arm looked stark white against the faded couch cushions. Lena showered quickly, dressed in her mother's uniform, and left before Clara could wake up and ask questions she didn't know how to answer. The walk to the Malone estate felt different this time. The streets were waking up, delivery trucks rumbling past, shop owners unlocking doors, the city stretching and yawning into another day. Lena moved through it all like a ghost, her mind replaying the same moment over and over. I can stop it. She'd used Rhett Malone's name like a weapon, and it had worked. Boyd had actually looked afraid. But using someone's reputation as a shield was different from accepting their help directly, and Lena had no idea what Rhett would do when he found out. If he found out. The gates to the estate opened as she approached. The same guards from yesterday nodded at her without speaking. Lena walked through, her stomach tight with anxiety. "Mrs." Holloway was waiting at the servants' entrance, clipboard in hand. "You're early again," she said. "Mr. Malone wants to see you before you start cleaning." "Now." "Yes, now. Follow me." Lena's pulse kicked up. She followed Mrs. Holloway through the familiar hallways, but instead of turning toward the west wing, they went deeper into the house. The decor changed gradually, less formal, more lived in. They passed a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a sitting room with leather furniture, and finally stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. "Wait here," Mrs. Holloway said, and knocked twice. "Come in," Rhett's voice called from inside. Mrs. Holloway opened the door, gestured for Lena to enter, then left without a word. Lena stepped into what appeared to be a study. Dark wood paneling, thick curtains, a desk covered in papers, and a laptop. Rhett stood by the window, still wearing a suit despite the early hour. He turned when she entered. "Close the door," he said. Lena did, her hand trembling slightly on the brass handle. "Sit." She sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she forced herself to stay still. Rhett moved to his desk but didn't sit. He leaned against it, arms crossed, studying her with those unsettling gray eyes. "Did you sleep last night?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. What? Simple question. Did you sleep? No, not really. Why not? Lena looked down at her hands. I was waiting to see if someone would come back. And did they? Yes, for a while. Then they left. Rhett was quiet for a moment. You didn't call the police. No. Why not? Because the police don't help. The words came out bitter. They take a report, maybe arrest him for a night, then let him go. And he comes back angrier than before. Him, Rhett repeated. So it's a man. Someone who's hurt you before. Someone who hurt your mother badly enough to send her to the hospital. Lena said nothing. You used my name, Rhett said calmly. Last night when he came to your apartment. You told him you work for me. You told him I know what he did. You threatened him with me. Lena's head snapped up. How did you? I have people who watch the people who work for me, especially new people, especially people who show up with fresh bruises and frightened eyes. You had someone follow me? I had someone protect you. There's a difference. Lena stared at him, her mind reeling. Why? Because I told you I could stop it, and you didn't believe me. So I made sure he couldn't hurt you or your mother last night. Rhett's expression didn't change. But using my name as a threat only works if I'm willing to back it up. So I need to know who we're dealing with. We're not dealing with anyone. I can handle this myself. Clearly, Rhett gestured at her arm, still marked with fading bruises. That's why you're wearing long sleeves in June. That's why your mother has a broken arm. That's why you haven't slept. Because you're handling it so well. You don't understand? Then explain it to me. Why do you care? Lena's voice rose. You don't know me. I'm just some girl who cleans your house. Why does any of this matter to you? Rhett pushed off from the desk and walked to the window. For a long moment, he didn't speak. When he did, his voice was quieter. 10 years ago, I lived in a different house, smaller, in a worse part of the city. My mother cleaned houses for rich families, just like your mother does now. And my stepfather, he paused. He was a lot like whoever hurt you, drunk, violent, good at hiding it from people who mattered. Lena felt something shift in her chest. One night he went too far, Rhett continued, still looking out the window. Put my mother in the hospital, fractured her skull. The police came, took statements, arrested him. He was out in 48 hours. When he came back, he told my mother if she ever called the cops again, he'd kill her. What did you do? I was 17. I didn't have power or money or connections. So I went to the most dangerous man I knew, a man named Vincent Caruso, who ran half the illegal operations in the city. I told him what happened, asked him to make it stop. And did he? Yes. Rhett turned to face her. Vincent sent 2 men to have a conversation with my stepfather. I don't know what they said, but my stepfather never came back, never called, never sent threats. He just disappeared from our lives. Lena's throat felt tight. What did you have to give Vincent in return? Everything. My future, my choices, my freedom. Rhett's smile was humorless. Vincent owned me from that moment on. I worked for him, learned from him, became exactly what he needed me to become. And when he died 5 years ago, I inherited his empire. Do you regret it? Every day. Rhett moved back to his desk and finally sat down. But I'd make the same choice again. Because my mother is alive. She's safe. She lives in a house where nobody hurts her. And that's worth everything I gave up. Lena understood what he was saying. The comparison was obvious, deliberate. He was showing her a path, a terrible, irrevocable path, and waiting to see if she'd take it. I don't want to owe you, she said quietly. I'm not asking you to owe me. I'm asking you to let me help. There's always a price. Yes, Rhett agreed. The price is honesty. Tell me who hurt you. Tell me the truth. That's all I'm asking. Lena looked at him, really looked at him. He didn't look like a monster. He looked tired, scarred, human. His name is Boyd Keller, she said finally. He's my stepfather. He's been in and out of our lives for 8 years. My mother finally got a restraining order against him 6 months ago, but he keeps coming back. The police won't do anything unless he violates it in front of witnesses, and he's smart enough not to. Where does he live? I don't know. He moves around, different motels, friends' couches. Where does he work? He doesn't. He's unemployed. Rhett pulled a notepad from his desk drawer and wrote something down. What does he look like? Lena described Boyd, height, weight, the scar above his left eyebrow from a bar fight 3 years ago. Rhett wrote it all down without comment. When's his next court date? Rhett asked. July 15th. For what? Assault, harassment, violation of the restraining order. If he's convicted, he'll go to jail for up to 2 years. And if he's not convicted, Lena looked away. Then he comes back. Rhett set down his pen. He won't make it to the court date. What? Boyd Keller won't make it to July 15th. He won't come back to your apartment. He won't hurt you or your mother ever again. Lena's hands clenched in her lap. What are you going to do to him? Nothing he doesn't deserve. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're going to get. Rhett's voice was firm, but not unkind. You don't want to know the details, Lena. Trust me. You just want it to stop. And it will. I didn't ask you to kill him. I'm not going to kill him. Rhett stood. I'm going to have a conversation with him, the same kind of conversation Vincent's men had with my stepfather. And after that conversation, Boyd will understand that coming near you or your mother ever again would be a very bad idea. And if he doesn't understand, then the conversation will continue until he does. Lena felt sick. This was wrong. She knew it was wrong. Accepting help from a criminal, letting violence answer violence, crossing a line she'd sworn she'd never cross. But Boyd had broken her mother's arm. He'd choked Lena when she was 16 and laughed when she cried. He'd destroyed every shred of safety they'd ever tried to build. And he'd keep doing it unless someone stopped him. When? Lena asked quietly. Tonight. Maybe tomorrow. Depends on how long it takes my people to find him. And my mother? Your mother stays here, in the estate. There's a guest house on the east side of the property. Small, private, fully furnished. She can recover there. You can stay with her if you want. Why would you do that? Because, Rhett said simply, if Boyd can't find her, he can't hurt her. And if he comes looking for her here, my security will handle it. Lena stood on shaking legs. I don't know how to repay this. I already told you the price. Honesty, that's all. Rhett walked around the desk and stopped a few feet away from her. But there's one more thing. What? You need to tell your mother. She needs to know what's happening. She needs to agree to come here. I won't force her. She'll never agree. She'll think it's too dangerous. Then convince her it's more dangerous to stay where she is. Lena nodded slowly. Okay, I'll try. Good. Rhett moved to the door and opened it. Mrs. Holloway will give you the day off. Go home. Pack what you need. Bring your mother back here by tonight. I'll have the guest house ready. Lena walked toward the door, then paused. Rhett? He looked at her, one hand still on the doorknob. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when it's over. Lena left the study with her mind spinning. The hallway seemed longer on the way out, the walls pressing in. When she reached the servants' entrance, Mrs. Holloway was waiting with a set of keys. For the guest house, she explained. East Garden, past the fountain. You can't miss it. How did you know? Mr. Malone called ahead. Mrs. Holloway's expression was unreadable. He takes care of his people. Remember that. Lena took the keys and left. The walk home felt like moving through water. Everything looked the same. Same streets, same buildings, same cracks in the sidewalk. But the world had tilted on its axis. She'd made a choice. There was no going back now. Clara was awake when Lena entered the apartment, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. She looked up, surprised. You're home early. We need to talk, Lena said. She told her mother everything. About Rhett noticing the bruises, about the conversation in the study, about Boyd coming back last night and Lena using Rhett's name to scare him away, about the offer to stay at the guest house. Clara listened in silence, her face growing paler with each word. Lena, she said when Lena finished, do you understand what you've done? I protected us. You've made a deal with a criminal. You've put us in debt to the most dangerous man in the city. He said there's no debt, just honesty. There's always a debt. Clara's voice shook. Always. Men like Rhett Malone don't give help for free. They collect. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they always collect. So what was I supposed to do? Let Boyd keep hurting you? Wait for him to put you in the hospital again? Or worse? Clara closed her eyes. I don't know. Rhett can stop it, Mom. He can make Boyd go away. Permanently. And what happens to Rhett when he does? What happens to us? Nothing. He has people, resources. He's been doing this for years. That doesn't make it right. I don't care if it's right, Lena's voice cracked. I care if it works. I care if we're safe. I care if you can sleep at night without wondering if Boyd's going to break down the door. Clara opened her eyes, tears streaming down her face. What if it changes you? What if accepting his help makes you into someone you don't recognize? Lena knelt beside her mother's chair and took her good hand. I'm already someone I don't recognize. I threatened a man with violence last night and I didn't feel guilty. I felt relieved. So maybe I've already changed, but at least this way, we survive. Clara looked at their joined hands, her shoulders sagging. When do we have to go? Tonight. He's having the guest house prepared. And if I say no? Then I go alone and you stay here, and we hope Boyd doesn't come back before Rhett finds him. Clara was quiet for a long time. Then she stood, wincing as the movement jarred her broken arm. Help me pack. They filled 2 suitcases with clothes and essentials. Clara didn't have much. A few books, some photographs, her nursing credentials from 30 years ago. Lena packed her own things mechanically, her mind elsewhere. By the time they finished, it was mid-afternoon. Lena called a taxi because Clara couldn't walk the distance with her arm in a cast. The driver loaded their suitcases without comment, and they rode to the estate in silence. The gates opened immediately. The taxi driver's eyes widened when he saw where they were going, but he didn't ask questions. Lena paid him with the last of her cash and helped Clara out of the car. Mrs. Holloway met them at the main entrance. The guest house is ready. Follow me. She led them through the garden, a sprawling landscape of flowers and stone paths, fountain trickling peacefully at its center. The guest house sat tucked behind a hedge of roses, small and charming with white shutters and a blue door. Inside, it was perfect. Bedroom, bathroom, small kitchen, sitting area, clean and furnished and safe. Mr. Malone will send someone to check on you tonight, Mrs. Holloway said. If you need anything, there's a phone in the kitchen, extension 7. Then she left, and Lena and Clara were alone. Clara sank into an armchair, looking around with wide eyes. This is insane. This is safe, Lena corrected. For how long? As long as we need. Clara didn't argue. She looked too tired to argue. Lena unpacked their things, made tea, tried to pretend everything was normal. But when night fell and the guest house settled into darkness, she couldn't sleep. She sat by the window watching the main house in the distance, wondering what Rhett was doing. If his people had found Boyd yet, what would happen when they did? Around midnight, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Hello? It's done. Rhett's voice, calm and even. Boyd won't be a problem anymore. Lena's grip tightened on the phone. What did you do? I kept my promise. That's all you need to know. Is he alive? Yes, scared, but alive. He's leaving the city tonight. He won't come back. How can you be sure? Because I explained what would happen if he did. Very clearly, very thoroughly. And Boyd Keller is many things, but he's not stupid. Lena closed her eyes, relief and guilt warring in her chest. Thank you. You already said that. I mean it this time. Rhett was quiet for a moment. Get some sleep, Lena. You're safe now. So is your mother. He hung up before she could respond. Lena sat in the darkness, staring at her phone. It was over. Boyd was gone. They were safe. She should feel happy, relieved, free. Instead, she felt hollow. She'd crossed a line tonight, accepted help from a dangerous man, let him use violence on her behalf. And the worst part was that she didn't regret it. She'd do it again in a heartbeat. The next morning, Lena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The guest house, the estate, Rhett's phone call. Boyd was gone. She got up and found Clara in the kitchen, making coffee with one hand. Her mother looked better, less pale. The tension that had lived in her shoulders for years seemed lighter. Did you sleep? Clara asked. A little. You? Better than I have in months, Clara poured 2 cups of coffee. He called you last night. I heard your phone. Yeah. Is it done? Yeah. Clara nodded slowly. How do you feel? I don't know, Lena admitted. I should feel guilty. I should feel like I did something wrong, but I don't. That scares you? Yeah. Clara reached across the table and squeezed Lena's hand. You did what you had to do. We both did. And now we get to live without fear. That's not nothing. But at what cost? A cost we can afford. Clara's voice was firm. Whatever Rhett Malone asks for in return, we'll handle it. Together. Lena nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd traded one kind of danger for another. Later that morning, Mrs. Holloway appeared at the guest house with a message. Mr. Malone would like to see you. Both of you. They followed her through the garden to a covered terrace behind the main house. Rhett sat at an outdoor table drinking coffee and reading a newspaper. He stood when they approached. Clara, I'm glad you're settling in. Clara met his gaze evenly. Thank you for your hospitality and for handling our situation. It wasn't a problem. Rhett gestured to the empty chairs. Please, sit. They sat. Lena noticed her mother didn't look afraid. Wary, yes. Uncertain, but not afraid. I wanted to talk to you both about what happens next, Rhett said. Boyd is gone, but that doesn't solve all your problems. You still need income. You still need a place to live long term. The guest house is yours for as long as you want it, but I assume you'd prefer something more permanent. We can't afford anything permanent, Clara said quietly, which is why I'm offering you a choice. Rhett set down his coffee cup. Clara, you can return to your position here whenever your arm heals. Same pay, same hours. Or, if you prefer, I can help you find a position elsewhere, something with better hours, better benefits. Clara blinked. Why would you do that? Because you're a good worker, and you deserve better than what you've had. And Lena? Lena is welcome to continue working here as well. But, Rhett turned to face Lena directly. I have another suggestion. What kind of suggestion? You're a nurse, a new nurse with no experience, which means most hospitals won't hire you for anything better than night shifts in understaffed wards. But I have a private physician who works for my organization, Dr. Sarah Chen. She's looking for an assistant, someone to help with basic medical care for my employees. It's not glamorous, but it's legitimate work, good pay, and you'd gain experience. Lena stared at him. You want me to work for you? Officially? I want to offer you an opportunity. You can say no. Why me? Because you're qualified, you're desperate, and you've already proven you can keep your mouth shut about things you see. Rhett's expression didn't change. And because I think you deserve a chance to use your education for something more than scrubbing floors. Lena looked at her mother. Clara's face was unreadable. I need to think about it, Lena said. Take your time. The offer stands. Rhett stood. In the meantime, you're both welcome here. No pressure, no expectations, just safety. He left them sitting at the table, the morning sun warm on their faces. Clara spoke first. He's trying to buy your loyalty. I know. And it's working. Lena didn't deny it. What are you going to do? Clara asked. I don't know yet. Lena stared at the main house, its windows gleaming in the sunlight. But I think I want to see what happens if I say yes. Clara sighed. Then I hope you know what you're getting into. I don't, Lena admitted, but I want to find out. Because for the first time in her life, someone was offering her something more than survival. They were offering her a future. And Lena was just desperate enough, or brave enough, or foolish enough to reach for it. 3 days passed before Lena gave Rhett her answer. She spent those days watching her mother heal in the safety of the guest house, watching the way Clara's shoulders gradually loosened, the way she started sleeping through the night without jerking awake at every sound. She spent them walking the estate grounds, learning its rhythms. The gardeners who arrived at dawn, the security team that changed shifts every 8 hours, the careful choreography of a household built on secrets and silence. And she spent them thinking about what it meant to work for a man like Rhett Malone. On the 4th morning, she found him in the library. He sat in a leather chair by the window, reading a medical textbook with the kind of focus that made the rest of the world disappear. He didn't look up when she entered, but he spoke anyway. You've decided. It wasn't a question. Lena closed the door behind her. I want to meet Dr. Chen first, see what the job actually involves. Then I'll decide. Rhett marked his place in the book and set it aside. Fair enough. She's working today. I'll take you to her. Now? Unless you have somewhere else to be. Lena didn't. They left the estate in a black car with tinted windows, driven by a man named Marcus who didn't speak unless spoken to. Lena sat in the back seat beside Rhett, watching the city roll past. They drove away from the wealthy neighborhoods, through commercial districts, and finally into an area Lena recognized from her clinicals, working class, struggling, the kind of place where people didn't ask questions because they couldn't afford the answers. The car stopped in front of what looked like a small, urgent care clinic. Modest brick building, simple sign that read Chen Medical Services. This is it? Lena asked. This is it. Rhett opened his door. Doctor, Chen runs a legitimate practice. She treats anyone who walks through that door, takes whatever insurance they have, or no insurance at all. But she also treats my people when they can't go to a hospital. Because hospitals ask questions. Exactly. Inside, the clinic was clean and bright. A waiting room with worn chairs, medical posters on the walls, the antiseptic smell Lena had come to associate with healing. A young man sat behind the reception desk, typing on a computer. He looked up when they entered. Mr. Malone, Dr. Chen's expecting you. Exam room 3. They walked down a narrow hallway past 2 exam rooms, a supply closet, and a small office. Room 3's door stood open. Inside, a woman in her 40s stood washing her hands at the sink. She had dark hair pulled back in a braid, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of efficient movements that spoke of years of practice. Rhett, she said without turning around, you're early. Sarah, this is Lena Karu, the nurse I mentioned. Dr. Chen dried her hands and turned to face them. Her gaze traveled over Lena with clinical precision, assessing, cataloging, filing away information. You just graduated, Dr. Chen said. Yes, ma'am. Top of your class or bottom? Middle. I worked full-time while studying. Didn't have time to compete for top grades. Honest, I like that. Dr. Chen crossed her arms. Rhett says you need experience. Why here? Why not a hospital? Because hospitals aren't hiring, and because Lena hesitated, then decided on honesty. Because I owe him, and because I need to eat. Also honest. Dr. Chen glanced at Rhett. Give us the room. Rhett left without argument, closing the door behind him. Dr. Chen gestured to the exam table. Sit. Let me see your hands. Lena sat and held out her hands. Dr. Chen examined them, turning them over, checking her nails, pressing her fingertips. Steady, doctor, Chen said. Good. Can you start an IV? Yes. Suture a wound? I've practiced on simulation models, never on a real person. Can you handle blood? Yes. Can you handle screaming? Lena met her gaze evenly. Yes. Dr. Chen released her hands and stepped back. Here's what you need to understand. Most of my patients are normal people, kids with ear infections, old folks with diabetes, construction workers with broken fingers. I treat them like any other doctor would. But some of my patients are Rhett's people, and those patients sometimes come in with gunshot wounds, stab wounds, injuries they can't explain to the police. When that happens, you don't ask questions, you don't call authorities, you help me treat them, and then you forget you ever saw them. Can you do that? Lena thought about Boyd's bruises on her arm, about the restraining order that hadn't protected them, about all the times the law had failed to keep her mother safe. Yes, she said, I can do that. Why? Because sometimes the law doesn't help the people who need it most. Dr. Chen's expression softened slightly. You sound like someone who's learned that the hard way. I have. Good. Then you understand what you're getting into. Dr. Chen moved to her desk and pulled out a file. The job is 30 hours a week. $10 an hour to start, 15 after 3 months if you prove yourself. You assist with patient care, maintain inventory, sterilize equipment, and occasionally hold someone's hand while I dig a bullet out of their shoulder. Benefits include health insurance after 60 days, and the knowledge that you're probably going to see things that would get most doctors arrested. Still interested? Lena didn't hesitate. Yes. Then you start Monday, 8 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Dr. Chen opened the door and called down the hall. Rhett, she's hired. Rhett reappeared, looking unsurprised. Told you she'd say yes. You also told me she was smart. Jury's still out on that. But Dr. Chen's smile took the edge off the words. Take care of this one. She's got potential. On the drive back to the estate, Lena stared out the window and tried to process what she'd just agreed to, working in a clinic that treated criminals, helping people who'd been shot and stabbed and beaten, becoming complicit in a system that existed outside the law. You can still change your mind, Rhett said quietly. I know. But you won't. No. Lena turned to look at him. Why did you really offer me this job? And don't say it's because I'm qualified. There are hundreds of qualified nurses in this city. Rhett was quiet for a moment, watching the streets pass. Because I see myself in you. 10 years ago, standing in Vincent Caruso's office, making a choice between two impossible options. I know what it's like to trade your principles for survival, and I know what it's like to wonder if you'll ever get them back. Did you? Get them back? No, but I learned to live with who I became. He looked at her directly. I'm offering you a third option. Work for me, yes. See things you wish you hadn't, yes. But also learn, grow, build a career, and maybe, if you're smart and careful, keep enough of yourself intact that you still recognize the person in the mirror. That's a pretty speech. It's the truth. Lena believed him. That was the terrifying part. When they arrived back at the estate, Clara was sitting on the guest house porch, reading a book in the afternoon sun. She looked up as Lena approached, her eyes searching. You took the job, Clara said. It wasn't a question. I took the job. Clara closed her book. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's my girl. Clara smiled sadly. Brave and reckless in equal measure. Boo. Lena sat beside her mother on the porch steps. Are you angry? No, scared maybe, worried, but not angry. Clara reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind Lena's ear, the gesture achingly familiar. You're an adult. You get to make your own choices, even the ones I don't agree with. What would you do if you were me? Clara thought about that. Probably the same thing, which is why I'm scared. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun move across the garden. Somewhere in the main house, Lena could hear music playing, something classical, elegant, at odds with everything she thought she knew about Rhett Malone. He's not what I expected, Lena said. No one ever is. Clara shifted her casted arm to a more comfortable position. But that doesn't mean he's safe. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're starting to trust him, and trust is dangerous when it comes to men like Rhett. Lena didn't argue because Clara was right. She was starting to trust him. Against all logic, against all her instincts for self-preservation, she was beginning to believe that Rhett Malone actually wanted to help her, and that scared her more than anything else. The weekend passed in a strange limbo. Lena prepared for her first day at the clinic, reviewing her nursing notes, practicing IV placement on a practice arm Dr. Chen had loaned her, trying to calm the anxiety that churned in her stomach. Clara watched with worried eyes, but said nothing. Sunday evening, Lena was sitting in the guest house kitchen when someone knocked on the door. She opened it to find Rhett standing on the porch, holding a leather bag. Can I come in? He asked. Of course. He entered, setting the bag on the kitchen table. Medical supplies. Dr. Chen thought you might want to review some procedures before tomorrow. Suture kit, IV equipment, basic surgical tools. Lena opened the bag and found exactly what he'd described, all neatly organized and sterile wrapped. Thank you. There's something else. Rhett pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Your first week's pay. In advance. I haven't even started yet. Consider it a signing bonus. Lena opened the envelope and found $300 in cash. More money than she'd seen in months. This is too much. It's exactly what you're worth. Rhett moved toward the door, then paused. Lena? You're going to see difficult things tomorrow, things that might make you question your choice. But remember, everyone who comes through Dr. Chen's door is there because they need help. Whatever they've done, whatever choices they've made, in that moment, they're just people in pain. Treat them like that, and you'll be fine." He left before she could respond. Lena counted the money 3 times, then hid it in her dresser drawer. $300. Enough to buy groceries for weeks. Enough to start rebuilding their savings. Enough to make her feel like maybe, just maybe, they'd actually survive this. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, threatening rain. Lena dressed in scrubs Dr. Chen had provided, pulled her hair back in a neat ponytail, and tried to ignore the nausea twisting in her stomach. Clara made her breakfast, toast and eggs, which Lena forced down despite having no appetite. "You'll do great," Clara said, squeezing her good hand. "I hope so." Marcus drove her to the clinic in the same black car. He didn't speak during the drive, but when he dropped her off, he said, "Good luck, Miss Karu." It was the first time he'd spoken directly to her. Dr. Chen was already inside, reviewing charts at the reception desk. She looked up when Lena entered. "You're early. Excellent. Come on, I'll show you around properly." The tour was efficient and thorough. Exam rooms 1 and 2 for regular patients. Room 3 for special cases. The supply closet was meticulously organized by category and expiration date. The small lab in the back had basic equipment, microscope, centrifuge, refrigerator for samples. Everything was clean, professional, legitimate. "Most days will be routine," Dr. Chen explained. "Sore throats, sprained ankles, prescription refills. But once or twice a week, we'll get someone from Rhett's organization. When that happens, the front desk will text me a code, Red Alert. That means close the waiting room, lock the front door, and prep room 3. What kind of injuries are we talking about? Last month, a knife wound to the abdomen. Month before, a gunshot graze across the ribs. Sometimes it's just badly broken bones from fights. Sometimes, Dr. Chen's expression darkened. Sometimes it's worse. Have you ever lost someone? Twice. Both times they were already dying when they arrived. There are limits to what we can do here. Dr. Chen met Lena's eyes. If someone needs surgery beyond basic suturing, if they need blood transfusions, if they're in actual critical condition, we stabilize and send them to the hospital with a cover story. Rhett understands that. He'd rather have his people arrested than dead. The morning started with regular patients. A mother with a feverish toddler. An elderly man needing his blood pressure medication refilled. A teenager with a suspected broken wrist from skateboarding. Lena assisted with each one, taking vitals, preparing equipment, learning Dr. Chen's rhythm and preferences. By noon, she was starting to relax. This was just nursing, normal, legitimate nursing. Then her phone buzzed. Text from the front desk. Red alert. Dr. Chen's jaw tightened. Lock the front door, close the blinds, prep room 3 with the trauma kit. Lena moved automatically, her training overriding her fear. She locked the clinic's front entrance, pulled down the window blinds, then ran to room 3. The trauma kit was in the cabinet, sterile gloves, gauze, hemostats, suture materials, local anesthetic. She laid everything out on the tray with shaking hands. Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway. They're bringing him through the back entrance. Knife wound to the upper thigh, possible femoral artery involvement. You're going to assist. Can you handle it? Yes? If you need to step out, tell me. Don't just pass out. I can't catch you and save him at the same time. 2 men carried the patient through the back door moments later. He was conscious, sweating, his hands pressed against his thigh where blood soaked through his jeans. He couldn't have been older than 25. Table, Dr. Chen ordered. They laid him down. Lena cut away his jeans while Dr. Chen pulled on gloves. The wound was deep, about 4 inches long, bleeding steadily, but not spurting. Missed the artery, doctor, Chen said with obvious relief. But it's close. Lena, pressure, firm and steady. Lena pressed gauze against the wound, feeling warm blood seep through the fabric. The young man groaned but didn't scream. What's your name? Dr. Chen asked him while preparing the anesthetic. Marcus. Lena's head snapped up. Not the Marcus who drove her. Different man, but the name still sent a jolt through her system. Okay, Marcus, this is going to sting, then go numb. Hold still. Doctor. Chen injected local anesthetic around the wound. Marcus gritted his teeth but stayed still. Once the area was numb, Dr. Chen began cleaning and exploring the wound. Muscle damage, but nothing we can't fix. Lena, I need you to irrigate while I suture. Saline bottle is on the counter. For the next 40 minutes, Lena assisted with the kind of focus she'd only experienced during her most difficult clinical rotations, irrigating the wound, handing Dr. Chen instruments, monitoring Marcus's vitals. He stayed conscious throughout, occasionally making dark jokes about his own stupidity. Bar fight, he explained when Dr. Chen asked. Other guy pulled a knife, I pulled a gun. Guess who won? Depends on your definition of winning, Dr. Chen said dryly, placing another suture. You're going to have a scar. Adds character. When it was over, Dr. Chen wrapped the thigh in clean bandages and wrote out instructions for wound care. No strenuous activity for 2 weeks. Come back in 5 days so I can check for infection. If you develop a fever, call immediately. Yes, ma'am. The 2 men who'd brought Marcus helped him out through the back door. Dr. Chen watched them go, then turned to Lena. You okay? Lena looked down at her hands, blood under her fingernails, adrenaline still humming through her veins. Yeah, I think so. Good. Clean up room 3, then take your lunch break. You've earned it. Lena scrubbed the exam table, disposed of the bloody gauze, restocked the trauma kit. Her hands moved automatically while her mind processed what had just happened. She'd just helped treat a criminal, a man who'd been in a bar fight and pulled a gun, a man who might have killed someone, and she'd done it without hesitation. That should have bothered her more than it did. The afternoon returned to routine patients. By the time the clinic closed at 6, Lena was exhausted in a way that felt almost normal. Dr. Chen found her in the supply closet, taking inventory. You did well today, Dr. Chen said. Better than most new nurses on their first red alert. I kept expecting to panic. But you didn't. That's what matters. Dr. Chen leaned against the doorframe. This job isn't for everyone, Lena. Most people can't separate the person from their actions. They see a criminal and they freeze up, get judgmental, refuse to help. But you saw someone bleeding and you helped. That's the mark of a real nurse. Or someone with questionable morals. Maybe both. Dr. Chen smiled slightly. Go home. Rest. I'll see you tomorrow. Marcus, her Marcus, was waiting outside in the black car. He nodded when she got in, but didn't ask about her day. They drove back to the estate in silence. Lena found Clara in the guest house kitchen, making dinner. Her mother took one look at her face and pulled her into a careful one-armed hug. Bad day? Clara asked. Complicated day. Want to talk about it? Not yet. Clara didn't push. She just held Lena until the shaking stopped, then fed her pasta and let her sit in silence. Later that night, Lena couldn't sleep. She kept seeing Marcus on the exam table, blood soaking through gauze, Dr. Chen's steady hands placing sutures. She kept hearing Rhett's voice. Everyone who comes through that door is there because they need help. She got up and walked through the garden, needing air and space to think. The main house glowed with warm light from several windows. As she walked past, she noticed one window in particular, the library, where a figure sat reading. Rhett. Before she could second-guess herself, Lena walked to the terrace door and knocked. Come in, Rhett called. She found him in the same chair as before, reading the same medical textbook. He looked up when she entered, unsurprised. Couldn't sleep? He asked. No. First red alert is always the hardest. How did you? Dr. Chen texted me. Said you handled it well. Lena sank into the chair across from him. I treated a man who'd been in a bar fight, who'd pulled a gun on someone, and I didn't even think twice about it. Is that what's bothering you? I don't know, maybe. I thought I'd feel guilty or conflicted, but I just feel tired. Rhett closed his book. You want to know what I think? Sure. I think you're learning the same thing I learned 10 years ago, that the world isn't divided into good people and bad people. It's divided into people who need help and people who refuse to give it. You chose to give it. That doesn't make you immoral. It makes you human. Even when the person I'm helping is a criminal? Especially then. Rhett's gaze was steady. The world has plenty of people willing to help the innocent and virtuous. It has very few willing to help the desperate and flawed. You're one of the few. That matters. Lena wanted to believe him. She wanted to accept his logic, his justification, his absolution for choices she was still learning to live with. What are you reading? She asked instead, changing the subject. Rhett held up the textbook. Advanced Surgical Techniques. It's outdated, published 12 years ago, but the fundamentals are the same. Why? Because I like to remember what I gave up. You wanted to be a surgeon. I was going to be a surgeon. I was accepted to medical school, full scholarship. I had a plan, a future, a path that didn't involve any of this. He gestured vaguely at the estate around them. Then my stepfather put my mother in the hospital, and I made a choice. And that choice led to another choice, and another, until suddenly I was running an empire built on violence and fear instead of saving lives. Do you regret it? Every single day. Rhett set the book aside. But I'd make the same choice again, because my mother is alive, she's safe. She got to watch me grow up instead of attending my funeral. That's worth every regret. Lena understood that. The sacrifice made for love. The future traded for survival. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. Always. Why are you really helping me? And don't say it's because you see yourself in me. There's more to it than that. Rhett was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Because I couldn't save myself. But maybe I can save you. The words hung in the air between them, honest and raw and terrifying in their vulnerability. Lena stood. I should go. Let you get back to your reading. Lena? She paused at the door. You're going to be fine, Rhett said. Better than fine. You're going to be exactly who you need to be. Lena left without responding, but she carried his words back to the guest house like a promise she desperately wanted to believe. The next 3 weeks fell into a rhythm Lena hadn't expected. Work at the clinic during the day, quiet evenings with Clara in the guest house, and occasional late-night conversations with Rhett in the library that she told herself were purely accidental, but knew were becoming something else entirely. Dr. Chen proved to be an exacting teacher, but a fair one. She corrected Lena's technique without condescension, trusted her with increasingly complex tasks, and by the end of the second week, let her suture a laceration on her own while Dr. Chen supervised. The patient, a woman who'd cut her hand on broken glass during what she vaguely described as an accident, sat perfectly still while Lena worked. And when Lena finished, Dr. Chen nodded once. Clean work, was all she said, but Lena felt the praise like sunlight. The red alerts came irregularly, sometimes twice in 1 week, sometimes not at all. A dislocated shoulder from a fight. Burns from an industrial accident that probably wasn't an accident. A young woman with bruises around her throat who wouldn't say how she got them, but accepted Dr. Chen's gentle examination and Lena's careful documentation with silent gratitude. Each case taught Lena something new about pain, about survival, about the infinite ways people learn to endure. Clara's arm was healing well. The cast would come off in 3 more weeks, and she'd already started talking about returning to work. But she seemed different now, lighter, as though the weight she'd carried for years had finally lifted. She smiled more, slept better. Sometimes Lena would find her sitting on the guest house porch, reading in the afternoon sun with an expression of such peaceful contentment that it made Lena's chest ache. This was what safety looked like. This was what her mother had been missing all those years, and they owed it all to Rhett Malone. Lena tried not to think about that too much, tried not to calculate the debt they were accumulating, the favors that would eventually need to be repaid. But late at night, when sleep wouldn't come, the arithmetic was inescapable. Rhett had given them safety, employment, a home, protection from Boyd. Those weren't small gifts, they were everything. And Lena had nothing to offer in return except her labor and her loyalty. She wondered which one he actually wanted. It was a Thursday evening, almost 4 weeks after Lena had started at the clinic, when everything shifted. She'd worked a long day, 2 red alerts, both relatively minor, plus a steady stream of regular patients, and was exhausted when Marcus drove her back to the estate. Clara was visiting a friend in the city, one of the other housekeepers from her old job, and had left a note saying she'd be home late. Lena made herself dinner, tried to read, gave up, and found herself walking through the garden toward the main house. The library light was on. It was always on these days, like Rhett knew she'd come looking eventually. She knocked. "Door's open," Rhett called. He wasn't reading this time. Instead, he sat at the desk, papers spread before him, a calculator and ledger open. He looked tired in a way Lena hadn't seen before. Shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders. "Bad day?" she asked. "Complicated day." He echoed her words from weeks ago with a slight smile. One of my warehouses was raided this morning. Police found enough evidence to make things difficult. Lena stepped into the room, but didn't sit. How difficult? Difficult enough that I'm trying to decide whether to bribe the right people or burn the evidence and take the loss. That's an actual decision you have to make? Welcome to my world. Rhett rubbed his eyes. Sorry, you didn't come here to listen to me complain about my criminal enterprise falling apart. I didn't come here for any particular reason. Lena paused, trying to find the right words. I couldn't sleep. Join the club. Rhett pushed back from the desk. Walk with me? They left the library and wandered through the darkened house. Rhett led her through rooms she'd cleaned but never really seen. A formal dining room with a table that could seat 20. A music room with a grand piano covered in dust. A conservatory filled with plants that someone clearly loved because they were thriving despite the late hour. This house is too big, Rhett said as they walked. Vincent left it to me along with everything else. I should sell it. Move somewhere smaller, but I can't seem to let go. Why not? Because this house represents everything I thought success would look like. When I was 17 working for Vincent, I used to imagine living somewhere like this. Having power, money, respect. I thought if I could just get here, everything would make sense. All the compromises would be worth it. And now? Now I live here alone in a house with 23 rooms and realize I traded my soul for an empty palace. He stopped in front of a window overlooking the garden, his reflection ghostly in the glass. You want to know the worst part? What? I'd still make the same choice. Every single time. Lena stood beside him, looking out at the same garden. Because your mother is safe. Because my mother is safe, he agreed. And because somewhere along the way, I learned that some people are worth saving, even if saving them destroys you. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning Lena wasn't sure she wanted to examine too closely. Why do you keep those medical textbooks? She asked instead. If reading them just reminds you of what you lost? Rhett was quiet for a long moment. Because I don't want to forget who I was supposed to be. The boy who wanted to save lives instead of ending them. The kid who believed medicine could heal anything if you just knew the right technique. He turned to face her. I keep them because forgetting feels like letting that person die completely. You could still go back to school, finish what you started. No, I couldn't. Medical schools don't accept students with criminal records. And even if they did, I don't have time to be a student. I have an empire to run, people who depend on me, enemies waiting for any sign of weakness. So you just gave up? I made a choice. Rhett's voice hardened slightly. There's a difference. Is there? He looked at her sharply, and for a moment Lena thought she'd pushed too far. Then his expression softened. Maybe not, he admitted. Maybe I've been telling myself there's a difference because it's easier than admitting I'm a coward. You're not a coward. You're just... Lena searched for the right word. Stuck. Stuck, Rhett repeated. That's generous. It's true. You're stuck between who you were and who you became, between the life you wanted and the life you have. And you don't know how to move forward because every option feels like another betrayal. Rhett stared at her. How did you... Because I'm stuck too, Lena said quietly. I wanted to be a nurse who helped people. Instead, I'm a nurse who helps criminals and pretends that's the same thing. I wanted to be someone who stood up to men like Boyd on my own. Instead, I let you solve my problems with threats and violence. I wanted to be strong and independent and good. Instead, I'm just surviving, and I don't know if that's enough. It's enough, Rhett said fiercely. Survival is always enough. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, survival looks a lot like slow surrender. Rhett moved closer, his gray eyes intense in the dim light. You haven't surrendered. You've adapted. You've made impossible choices in impossible circumstances and somehow managed to stay whole. That's not surrender, Lena. That's strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It never does, not when you're in the middle of it. His hand lifted, hesitated, then gently touched her shoulder. But trust me, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you'll look back and realize you were stronger than you ever knew. Lena's breath caught. Rhett's hand was warm through her shirt, his touch careful, almost reverent. They stood there in the darkened conservatory, surrounded by plants and shadows, and Lena felt something shift in the air between them. This was dangerous. This moment, this closeness, this growing certainty that Rhett Malone saw her in a way no one else ever had. I should go, Lena whispered. Rhett's hand dropped. Probably, but neither of them moved. Lena, Rhett said softly, I need to tell you something. Okay? I'm not a good man. I've hurt people, killed people, if we're being honest. I've made choices that would horrify you if you knew the details. And I can't promise I'll ever be anything other than what I am. A criminal who runs an empire built on blood and fear. Why are you telling me this? Because you're starting to look at me like I'm something I'm not. Like I'm redeemable. And I need you to understand that I'm not. I can be kind to you, protective, generous, but that doesn't change what I am underneath. Lena met his gaze steadily. I know what you are. Do you? Yes. You're a man who was forced to choose between two impossible options and has been living with the consequences ever since. You're someone who protects the people he cares about, even when it costs him everything. You're broken and brilliant and dangerous and kind. And you're right, you're not redeemable, but maybe that's not what matters. What matters then? That you're trying anyway. Rhett looked at her like she'd spoken a language he'd forgotten existed. Then he stepped back, breaking the moment. You should get some sleep, he said, his voice rough. Tomorrow's Friday. Dr. Chen always has a full schedule on Fridays. Right, yes. Lena moved toward the door, her heart pounding. Good night, Rhett. Good night, Lena. She walked back to the guest house in a daze, her mind replaying every word, every look, every accidental touch. Something had changed tonight. Some invisible line had been crossed, and Lena had no idea what came next. Clara was home when Lena arrived, sitting in the kitchen with tea. She took one look at Lena's face and sighed. You're falling for him. Lena froze. What? Rhett. You're falling for him. Don't bother denying it. I can see it all over your face. Lena sank into the chair across from her mother. It's not like that. Isn't it? He's my employer. He's a criminal. He's the first man who's ever protected you without expecting something in return, Clara finished quietly. The first man who's treated you like you matter. The first man who's made you feel safe. That doesn't mean I'm falling for him. Doesn't it? Clara reached across the table and took Lena's hand. Honey, I'm not judging you. I understand the appeal. He saved us. He gave us everything we needed when we had nowhere else to turn. It would be stranger if you didn't develop feelings for him. But he's still dangerous, still involved in things that could get him killed, still living a life that exists outside the law. Falling for him means accepting all of that. Are you ready for that? Lena pulled her hand away. I don't know what I'm ready for. I just know that when I'm with him, I don't feel invisible anymore. I feel seen. And I've spent my whole life being invisible. Claire's expression softened. I know, baby. I know. They sat in silence for a while, drinking tea that had gone cold, both lost in thoughts they couldn't quite articulate. Finally, Clara spoke. My cast comes off in 2 weeks. After that, I'll be able to work again. We'll have options. We won't be dependent on Rhett's generosity anymore. Are you saying we should leave? I'm saying we'll have the choice to leave, whether we take it or not. That's up to you. The words settled over Lena like snow, cold and quiet and inevitable. In 2 weeks, they'd have a choice. Stay in the safety of Rhett's protection or venture back into the world on their own terms. Lena didn't know which option terrified her more. The next week passed in a blur of work and worry. Doctor. Chen noticed Lena's distraction and called her on it during a quiet moment between patients. Whatever's going on in your head, deal with it, Dr. Chen said bluntly. I can't have you spacing out during a red alert. I'm sorry. I'll focus better. I don't want apologies. I want to know what's wrong. Lena hesitated, then decided on partial honesty. My mom's cast comes off next week. After that, we'll have to decide if we're staying at the estate or finding our own place. And that's complicated because staying means accepting more help from Rhett. And I don't know what that help will eventually cost us. Dr. Chen leaned against the exam table, arms crossed. Let me tell you something about Rhett Malone. I've worked for him for 6 years. In that time, I've seen him do terrible things. Really terrible. But I've also seen him keep his word, protect his people, and refuse to take advantage of anyone who works for him honestly. If he says there's no debt, there's no debt. You really believe that? I wouldn't work for him if I didn't. Dr. Chen's expression was serious. But here's the thing. Just because there's no debt doesn't mean there's no cost. Working for Rhett means seeing things you can't unsee, knowing things you can't unknow, being complicit in a system that operates outside the law. You have to decide if you can live with that. Can you? Most days, yes. Some days, no. But on balance, I sleep better knowing I'm helping people who have nowhere else to go than I would, working at a hospital that turns away patients without insurance. Dr. Chen pushed off the exam table. Only you can decide where your line is, Lena, but decide soon. This job doesn't work if you're ambivalent. That night, Lena found herself back in the library. Rhett was reading again, the same outdated surgical textbook, his expression distant. Can I ask you something? Lena said from the doorway. Always. She came in and sat across from him. If you could go back, if you could choose differently, would you? Rhett closed the book. That's a complicated question. I know. He was quiet for a long time, thinking. If I could go back knowing what I know now, I'd still make the same choice to ask Vincent for help. I'd still trade my future for my mother's safety, but I'd try harder to hold on to pieces of myself along the way. I'd refuse some of the jobs Vincent gave me. I'd draw lines I was too scared to draw at 17. I'd try to be less of a monster and more of a man. You're not a monster. I've done monstrous things. That's not the same as being a monster. Rhett smiled sadly. You're very good at rationalizing my sins. I'm good at seeing the difference between who you are and what you've done. There's a difference. Is there? Because most days I can't tell anymore. Lena leaned forward. Tell me about medical school. What were you going to specialize in? The question clearly surprised him. Why? Because I want to know who you were before all this. Before Vincent, before the Empire, before you became someone you don't recognize. Tell me about the version of you who wanted to be a surgeon. Rhett's expression shifted, surprise melting into something softer, more vulnerable. Trauma surgery. I wanted to work in emergency rooms, operating on people who came in barely alive. Car accidents, gunshot wounds, industrial injuries. The cases where you have minutes to make decisions that determine if someone lives or dies. Why trauma? Because it's honest. There's no time for politics or money or insurance negotiations. Someone's dying on your table and you either save them or you don't. That kind of clarity appealed to me. Still could. No, it couldn't. I'm 34 years old. Even if I could get into medical school tomorrow, I'd be 40 before I finished my residency. That's too late. Says who? Says reality. Reality is flexible, Lena countered. You have money, resources, connections. You could make it happen if you wanted to. And who would run the organization while I'm in school? Who would protect the people who depend on me? Maybe it's time to stop protecting them and start protecting yourself. Rhett stared at her. You're serious. Completely serious. You've spent 17 years doing what Vincent needed, what your people needed, what your mother needed. When do you get to do what Rhett needs? That's not how this works. Why not? Because I made commitments. I have responsibilities. You can't just walk away from an empire because you're having a midlife crisis. I'm not saying walk away. I'm saying find a successor, train someone to take over, create an exit strategy, and then go back to school and become who you were supposed to be. Rhett laughed, but it was hollow. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, but it's possible, if you want it badly enough. And if I don't want it badly enough, then you'll spend the rest of your life reading outdated surgical textbooks and wondering what might have been. Lena stood. I think you deserve better than that. She left before he could respond, her heart pounding. She'd pushed too hard, said too much, crossed boundaries she had no right to cross. But she meant every word. The next morning, Dr. Chen cornered her in the supply closet. What did you say to Rhett last night? Lena froze. What? He called me at midnight asking about medical school admission requirements for mature students. What did you say to him? I suggested he might want to finish what he started. Dr. Chen stared at her. And he listened to you? I don't know, maybe. Why? Because I've been suggesting the same thing for years and he's always shut me down. But one conversation with you and suddenly he's researching application deadlines. Dr. Chen's expression was unreadable. Whatever you have with him, it's more than employer and employee. I don't have anything with him. Keep telling yourself that. Dr. Chen handed her a box of supplies. Restock exam room 2. And Lena, be careful. Rhett's a good man underneath all the criminal enterprise, but that doesn't mean getting close to him is safe. Lena spent the rest of the day thinking about Dr. Chen's warning. That night, she avoided the library. The next night, too. But on the third night, Rhett appeared at the guest house door. Clara answered and immediately looked uncomfortable. Mr. Malone, is something wrong? I need to speak with Lena, if that's all right. Clara glanced at Lena, who nodded. I'll give you two some privacy. She disappeared into her bedroom, closing the door with exaggerated care. Rhett stood in the small living room, looking out of place among the modest furniture. You've been avoiding me. I've been working. You've been avoiding the library. That's different. Lena crossed her arms. I thought you might need space to think. About medical school. Yes. I've been thinking about it. A lot. Rhett ran a hand through his hair, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. And I have questions. Okay. Why do you care? Whether I go back to school, whether I become a surgeon, whether I spend the rest of my life reading textbooks. Why does any of that matter to you? Lena took a breath. Because you saved me, and my mother, and probably dozens of other people I don't even know about. And you deserve to be saved too. I don't need saving. Yes, you do. You're drowning in a life you never wanted, surrounded by violence you hate, running an empire that's killing you slowly, and you're too stubborn or too scared or too loyal to ask for help, so I'm offering it, the same way you offered it to me. Rhett's expression cracked. I don't know how to accept help. Learn, start small. Let me help you figure out if medical school is even possible. Let Dr. Chen help you find a successor. Let yourself imagine a different future. And if I can't, if I'm too broken or too far gone or too tangled up in this life, then at least you'll know you tried. Rhett crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into a hug. It wasn't romantic. It was desperate. The embrace of someone who'd been holding themselves together for so long they'd forgotten what it felt like to be held. Lena hugged him back, feeling his shoulders shake, wondering if he was crying or just finally letting himself feel something besides exhaustion and regret. Thank you, he whispered against her hair. For what? For seeing who I used to be. For believing he's still in here somewhere. He is, Lena said with absolute certainty, and he deserves a chance to live again. They stood there for a long time, 2 broken people holding each other up in a small guest house on a criminal's estate. And Lena realized with sudden clarity that this was the moment everything changed. This was the moment she stopped just surviving. This was the moment she started fighting for something better. For both of them. When Rhett finally pulled away, his eyes were red but clear. He looked at Lena with an expression she couldn't quite name. Gratitude mixed with something deeper, something that made her breath catch. I need to show you something, he said quietly. Now? Now. He led her through the garden to the main house, up a staircase she'd never climbed, down a hallway lined with portraits of people she didn't recognize. At the end of the hall, he opened a door to reveal a small office. Not the study where they'd first talked, but something more personal. The walls were covered with framed documents. Medical school acceptance letter, scholarship notification, dean's list certificates from his undergraduate years, a photograph of a younger Rhett in a white coat, smiling at the camera with genuine joy. I keep all of this here, Rhett said, his voice rough. Everything I was before Vincent, before all of this. I look at it sometimes when I need to remember that I used to be someone worth saving. Lena moved closer to the photograph. The boy in the picture looked so hopeful, so full of dreams that hadn't been crushed yet. You're still worth saving. Am I? Because some days I'm not sure. Some days I look at what I've become and I wonder if that boy is completely gone. If there's anything left to salvage. There is. I can see him right now, in the way you keep these documents, in the way you read those textbooks, in the way you helped me and my mother without expecting anything in return. He's still in there, Rhett. He's just been waiting for permission to come back. Rhett sank into the desk chair, looking suddenly exhausted. I've been making calls, researching. There are programs for mature students. Some medical schools specifically recruit people with life experience. I could theoretically apply for next year's intake. That's amazing. It's terrifying. I'd have to take the entrance exams, submit transcripts from 17 years ago, explain the gap in my education without mentioning that I've been running a criminal empire. So don't mention it. Say you were in family business. It's technically true. Rhett laughed despite himself. Family business, that's one way to describe organized crime. The point is, it's possible. You could actually do this. There's still the problem of the organization. I can't just abandon it. People depend on those operations for their livelihoods. Legitimate people. The ones who work in my legal businesses, the families who rely on the community programs I fund. If I walk away without a plan, everything collapses. Then don't walk away. Transition. Find someone you trust to take over gradually while you're in school. Create systems that don't require your constant oversight. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's possible if you want it badly enough. Lena moved to stand beside his chair. Do you want it badly enough? Rhett looked up at her, and in his eyes she saw 17 years of regret, of compromise, of dreams deferred. Yes, he said finally. I think I do. Then let's figure out how to make it happen. They spent the next 2 hours talking through possibilities. Rhett had a second-in-command named Marcus, not the driver, but a man he'd been grooming for years who understood the business and had the respect of the organization. The legal businesses could be restructured under a corporate umbrella that didn't require Rhett's daily involvement. The illegal operations could be gradually phased out or transferred to other organizations through carefully negotiated agreements. It would take time, Rhett said, making notes on a legal pad. At least a year, maybe 2, to transition everything properly. But it could work. So start now. Begin the process. Take the entrance exams. Submit your applications. Even if you're not ready to leave immediately, at least you'll have the option. Rhett set down his pen and looked at her with an intensity that made Lena's pulse quicken. Why are you doing this? Pushing me toward medical school, helping me plan an exit from the only life I've known for 17 years. What do you get out of it? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. Lena struggled to articulate feelings she barely understood herself. Maybe I just want to believe that people can change, that we're not locked into the choices we made when we were desperate and scared, that there's always a path back to who we were supposed to be. You're talking about yourself as much as me. Maybe I am. Maybe seeing you break free would prove it's possible for me too. You're already free, Lena. You have a career, skills, a future, built on treating criminals in a clinic that exists outside the law, working for a man who terrifies most people, living on an estate I could never afford on my own. That's not freedom. That's just a prettier cage. Rhett stood, closing the distance between them. Then leave. You and Clara. I meant what I said about helping your mother find legitimate work. I can give you both references. Help with housing deposits. Make sure you land on your feet. You don't owe me anything. That's not what I want. Then what do you want? The question hung in the air between them, charged with everything they'd been carefully not saying for weeks. I want you to go back to school, Lena said quietly. I want you to become the surgeon you were supposed to be. I want you to prove that it's never too late to reclaim your life. And then what? And then I want to be there when you do. I want to watch you save lives instead of ending them. I want to see you become someone you recognize in the mirror again. Lena, I'm not asking for promises. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to see you become who you're supposed to be. That's all. Rhett's hand came up to cup her face, his touch gentle, despite the calluses on his palms. You're asking for more than you think. You're asking me to believe I'm worth saving. That's not a small thing. I know, but I believe it enough for both of us, at least until you can believe it yourself. For a moment, Lena thought he might kiss her. His thumb traced her cheekbone, his gray eyes searching hers for something she hoped he found. Then he stepped back, breaking the moment. It's late. You should get some sleep. Rhett, please. I need time to think about all of this. Lena nodded and left, her heart hammering. When she returned to the guest house, Clara was waiting up. "Well?" her mother asked. "Well, what? Are you in love with him?" Lena sank onto the couch. "I don't know. Maybe. Does it matter?" "It matters if you're making decisions based on feelings instead of logic. All my logical decisions led nowhere. Maybe it's time to trust my feelings." Clara sighed and sat beside her daughter. "My cast comes off tomorrow. After that, we have choices. Real choices. We could leave this place, find an apartment, start over on our own terms. Or we could stay." Or we could stay," Clara agreed. "But if we stay, it needs to be because this is where we want to be. Not because we're afraid of what's out there. Not because we feel obligated, because we genuinely choose this life." "Do you want to leave?" Clara was quiet for a long time. "A month ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. But now? I sleep through the night. I'm not constantly looking over my shoulder. I can breathe without fear. That's worth something. But this isn't sustainable. Living in someone else's guest house, depending on someone else's generosity, building our lives in the shadow of Rhett's empire. Eventually, we need to stand on our own. What if we could stay and stand on our own? What if Rhett actually goes back to school and transitions away from the criminal enterprise? What if this place becomes something different?" Clara looked at her daughter with sad wisdom. "And what if it doesn't? What if he decides it's too hard or too scary or too late? What if he's still running this empire in 5 years, 10 years? Are you prepared to build your life around someone else's potential instead of their reality?" Lena didn't have an answer. The next morning, Clara's cast came off. Dr. Chen did the honors at the clinic, using an electric saw to cut through the plaster while Lena held her mother's hand. When the cast finally fell away, Clara's arm looked pale and slightly withered from weeks of immobility. "Perfectly healed," Dr. Chen pronounced, examining the x-rays. "You'll need physical therapy to rebuild strength, but there's no reason you can't return to work in a week or two." Clara flexed her fingers experimentally, wincing at the stiffness. "Thank you, Dr. Chen." "Thank your daughter. She's the one who made sure you got proper care." After Clara left to start her physical therapy exercises, Dr. Chen pulled Lena into the office. "I need to talk to you about something," Dr. Chen said, closing the door. Lena's stomach tightened. "Okay." "Rhett called me last night. He's serious about medical school. He wants my help preparing for the entrance exams, and he's asked me to start identifying someone who could take over managing his medical operations." "That's good, isn't it?" "It's complicated. If Rhett actually follows through, if he goes back to school and starts transitioning away from the organization, this clinic's funding could dry up. Most of my operating budget comes from him. Without that support, I'd have to close or find other investors." Lena felt cold. "I didn't think about that." Neither did he, apparently. But it's reality. This clinic exists because Rhett funds it. If he leaves, hundreds of people lose access to medical care they can't get anywhere else. "So what do we do?" "We plan. I've been thinking about applying for grants, maybe partnering with a hospital system that serves low-income communities. It won't be easy, but it's possible." Dr. Chen leaned against her desk. "But here's what you need to understand, Lena. If Rhett goes back to school, everything changes. Not just for him, but for everyone connected to his organization, including you." "I know." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you're encouraging him to blow up his entire life without fully considering the consequences. For him or for yourself. I'm trying to help him. I know. And your heart is in the right place. But good intentions don't pay the bills or protect the people who depend on his organization. You need to think about what happens next. Really think about it." Lena spent the rest of the day wrestling with Dr. Chen's warning. That evening, she found Rhett in the library again, surrounded by study materials for the medical school entrance exam. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Always." He set down his highlighter. "What's wrong?" Lena told him about her conversation with Dr. Chen, about the clinic's funding, about the ripple effects his decision would have on everyone connected to his organization. "I know," Rhett said quietly when she finished. "I've been making lists. The clinic, the community center, the job training programs, the housing assistance fund. All of it depends on money from my operations. If I transition away, I need to ensure those programs survive." "How?" "I'm working on it. Some of it can be restructured as legitimate nonprofit foundations with sustainable funding models. Some of it I can personally endow if I sell off certain assets. It's complicated, but not impossible. And the people who work in your illegal operations, what happens to them? That's harder. Some can transition to legitimate businesses. Some will need to find other opportunities, and some, Rhett rubbed his eyes, some won't have good options. That's the part that keeps me up at night. Maybe there's another way. I'm listening. Lena sat across from him, thinking out loud. What if you don't completely walk away? What if you transition to a more consultative role? You go to medical school, but you also help your successor manage the transition over several years. Phase out the most dangerous operations while maintaining the community programs. Create exit strategies for employees who want to leave the criminal side. It would take longer, but it might cause less damage. Rhett stared at her. You've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about what Dr. Chen said. About unintended consequences. About how my encouragement might actually make things worse for people who depend on you. It might, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't try. Rhett leaned forward. Here's what I've realized over the past few days. I've been using other people's dependence on me as an excuse not to change. I tell myself I can't leave because people need me, but really, I'm just afraid. Afraid of failing at medical school. Afraid of discovering I'm not smart enough or capable enough anymore. Afraid of finding out that the boy who wanted to be a surgeon is completely gone. He's not gone. How do you know? Because he's sitting right here, making study guides and researching programs and planning for a future he never thought he could have. That boy isn't gone, Rhett. He's just been waiting 17 years for permission to try again. Rhett's expression crumbled. What if I fail? Then you fail, but at least you'll know you tried. I'm 34 years old. I don't care if you're 54. It's never too late to become who you're supposed to be. You really believe that? I have to believe it, because if it's too late for you, then it's too late for me too. And I'm not ready to accept that. Rhett stood and crossed to her, pulling her to her feet. This time he did kiss her, gentle and careful and full of gratitude and something deeper that made Lena's heart race. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. I'm going to do it, he whispered. I'm going to apply to medical school. I'm going to take the exams. I'm going to try. Good. But I need you to understand something. If I do this, if I actually pull this off, everything changes. My life, my identity, my future. And I don't know where you fit in that future yet. I don't know what I can offer you besides uncertainty and chaos. I'm not asking for certainty. I'm asking for honesty. Then here's the truth. I care about you. More than I should. More than is probably wise. And if you stay, if you choose to be part of this transition, I promise I'll do everything I can to build a life worth sharing, but I can't promise it'll be easy or safe or conventional. I don't want easy or safe or conventional. I want real. And this, whatever this is, it feels real. Rhett kissed her again, deeper this time, and Lena felt something inside her shift and settle. This was her choice. Not survival, not obligation, not fear. Choice. The next 3 months passed in a whirlwind of change. Rhett took the medical school entrance exam and scored high enough to be competitive. He submitted applications to 6 programs, carefully crafting essays that explained his gap in education as time spent in family business management and community program development, all technically true. He began the long process of transitioning leadership to Marcus, who proved more capable than even Rhett had anticipated. Lena continued working at the clinic, watching Dr. Chen gradually build partnerships with local hospitals and apply for grants that would sustain the clinic's mission even if Rhett's funding decreased. Clara returned to work at the estate, though in a reduced capacity that her healing arm could handle, and began taking online courses in social work, a dream she'd deferred 30 years ago when Lena was born. The estate itself transformed. Rhett started hosting meetings with nonprofit directors, community leaders, and business partners instead of criminals. He sold off several properties associated with his illegal operations and invested the proceeds in legitimate ventures and endowment funds. The change was gradual but unmistakable. In January, 4 months after their conversation in the library, Rhett received his first acceptance letter. A medical school 3 hours north of the city, willing to take a chance on a 34-year-old applicant with excellent test scores and a compelling personal statement about wanting to give back to underserved communities. He showed Lena the letter in the library where so much of their story had unfolded. His hands shook as he held it. "I got in," he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. Lena threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. "You got in." "I actually got in. I told you it was possible." Rhett pulled back to look at her. "Come with me." "What?" "To the city where the school is. Come with me. There are hospitals there, clinics that would hire you in a heartbeat. You could build your career in a place where nobody knows about Dr. Chen's clinic or my organization. You could start fresh." "Rhett, I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other 6 months, but I also know that I want to build this new life with you in it. Not as someone who lives in my guest house or works in my clinic, but as a partner, an equal, someone who chooses to be with me because she wants to, not because she feels obligated." Lena's heart hammered. "What about my mother?" "Bring her. The city has excellent physical therapy programs and social work opportunities. She could finish her degree there, or she could stay here and visit when she wants. The choice is hers. You've thought about this." "I've thought about nothing else for weeks." Rhett took her hands. "Lena, you saved me. You looked at a broken criminal and saw someone worth saving. You pushed me to try when I'd given up. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. I want to spend the rest of my life proving that faith wasn't misplaced. This isn't about gratitude. It's not gratitude. It's love." The word hung between them, simple and enormous. "I love you. I don't know when it happened or how, but somewhere between you walking into my bedroom with bruises on your arm and now I fell completely in love with you." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too. That's why I pushed you toward medical school. That's why I want you to become who you're supposed to be, because I love you enough to want you to be whole, even if it means everything changes. So come with me. Help me build something new, something good, something that doesn't exist in the shadows. On one condition. Anything. You have to promise me something. When you're a doctor, when you're saving lives and using your skills the way you always should have, you have to remember where you came from. You have to remember what it's like to be desperate and scared and out of options. And you have to treat every patient like they're worth saving, even the ones who seem broken beyond repair." Rhett's smile was watery. "I promise." "Then, yes, I'll come with you." They told Clara that night. She listened to their plan. Rhett starting medical school, Lena finding nursing work in the new city, Clara deciding whether to join them or stay behind, with an expression Lena couldn't quite read. "You're sure about this?" Clara asked her daughter. "You're sure you want to tie your life to his?" "I'm sure." Clara turned to Rhett. "You hurt her, and I don't care how many medical degrees you have. I will find a way to make you regret it." "Understood." "Good." Clara's expression softened. "Then I guess I'm moving to a new city, because I'm not letting you two have all the adventures without me." The next few months were chaos. Packing, planning, coordinating moves, saying goodbye to Dr. Chen and the clinic staff. Marcus took over the organization with steady competence, promising to continue Rhett's transition plan and maintain the community programs. The estate was placed in a trust that would fund nonprofit work in perpetuity. On a warm day in June, almost exactly 1 year after Lena first walked into Rhett's bedroom with bruises on her arm, they drove north to their new city. Clara rode in the back seat, reading a social work textbook. Lena sat up front beside Rhett, watching the landscape change from familiar to unknown. "Nervous?" Rhett asked. "Terrified." "Me too. But it's the good kind of terrified, the kind that means we're doing something that matters." Rhett reached over and took her hand. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me, for believing in me, for refusing to let me give up. Thank you for the same thing." They drove into the future together, a former criminal empire boss about to become a medical student, a young nurse building her career on her own terms, and a woman who'd survived decades of abuse finally pursuing dreams she'd deferred for too long. It wasn't the life any of them had planned. It wasn't simple or safe or conventional, but it was theirs, built on choice instead of fear, on love instead of obligation. on the radical belief that it's never too late to become who you're supposed to be. 3 years later, Lena stood in the gallery of an operating room, watching through the glass as Rhett performed his first trauma surgery as a licensed resident. A car accident victim, critical condition, minutes to make decisions that would determine if they lived or died. Rhett's hands were steady, his voice was calm. He'd found his way back to the boy who wanted to save lives, and that boy had become a man who actually could. Beside Lena, Clara watched with tears streaming down her face. She'd finished her social work degree and now ran a program helping domestic violence survivors, the work she'd been meant to do all along. When the surgery ended successfully, Rhett looked up at the gallery. His eyes found Lena's, and he smiled. She smiled back, remembering the first time they'd met. The bruises on her arm, the fear in her mother's eyes, the desperate gamble of accepting help from a stranger. That gamble had led them here, to this moment, to this life, to everything they'd fought for and everything they'd become. Lena pressed her hand against the glass, and through it, Rhett pressed his hand to the same spot. Separated by glass but connected by everything that mattered. They'd both been invisible once, broken, afraid, stuck in lives they never chose. But they'd found each other in the darkness, and together they'd found their way back to the light, not through violence or fear or compromise, through the simple revolutionary act of believing that people can change, that it's never too late, that redemption is always possible if you're brave enough to reach for it. And as Lena watched Rhett save another life, the first of thousands he would save over his career, she knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Not survival, not obligation, not fear, choice. And that made all the difference.